Okay, Elaine and Vanessa, thanks so much for joining me. I know this can be kind of nerve-wracking to put yourself out there, but I appreciate you doing this because I think a lot of people will benefit from it. And we'll hear baby every once in a while because it's impossible as a new mom
Yeah.
to keep a baby quiet. Hey. Um, One of the biggest things that I wanted to kind of highlight today is Elaine is a client that I worked with when she was pregnant, and she reached out after her birth and felt really proud of how her birth went. And I always think I'd love to be able to bottle that and everybody else be able to share in that experience. And I wondered if both of you would be willing to talk about that. And luckily you said yes. And so I wanted to talk about the benefits of preparing for birth. And we all know that you can prepare and prepare and prepare, and it won't go necessarily how you think. But I think the major take home is when people say that I felt empowered and I felt like I was part of the process. And so that's more the thing that I want people to take out of this. And I wonder if Elaine, you start by talking about what your birth plan was in the first place.
Sure. So I wanted to have a home birth, but I used the malachite suite. So it was sort of that, not at home, but all the other benefits of being at home and not being in the hospital. And so that was my main thing that I wanted to be able to do. But I knew that you have to be really open-minded and that things don't always go the way that you plan. So my plan was to just try and be open to what was going to happen. But hopefully that I would be able to use the suite. Yeah.
Awesome. Vanessa, will you really quickly, for those people that don't know, like what is the malachite suite?
Mhm. Yeah, so we work in a province that you have the option in midwifery care of a hospital birth or a home birth. We don't have regulated birthing centers like some provinces do. And lots of people don't feel 100% comfortable at home, but would rather find an in-between option than just having a baby at the hospital. Particularly in this community too, where it's quite spread out. We have clients who live, 45 minutes away, but are still technically in Kelowna, and don't want to be that far away, but again, want to try for an out of hospital birth. So since clinics open in a house, we just offer an option to have the birth there. We're quite close to the hospital, and that's usually why people have felt comfortable for whatever reason, not wanting to be at home, but being there um, as a kind of in-between option. But it very much is just a home birth. There's no extra other than the location that we offer there.
Okay, thank you. Elaine, can you tell me like what brought you, because as I mentioned, you and I work together, and how did that become part of your birth plan? Like, where did you hear about pelvic floor physio, and what made you decide to take
Well,
advantage?
I had the benefit of knowing about it through work. And so as an osteopathic practitioner, I work with a lot of mums and babies, and at both of the clinics that I work out of, there are pelvic floor physios there as well. And so I knew kind of, a lot about it through them and through recommending it for my own clients and how beneficial it's been for them. And so it was always something that I knew I was going to do, to some degree during my own pregnancy and postpartum. And then, yeah, so now it's kind of been a great learning experience for me to go through it all myself too.
Do you remember at where in your pregnancy you came? Do you remember how many weeks roughly?
Maybe like 28 or 30 or
Okay.
something like that.
And it
Yeah.
was basically you started then because it was on your radar. I think sometimes people think, it's like there's a sequence that you go through and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to start doing this. And so you just kind of picked that date based on when you were ready.
Yeah, I think so. And I had been finding that I'd needed to be working with my breathing already a little bit. I just found that I was, struggling to take that nice deep breath with being pregnant, and I could feel that maybe that. So I worked with another physio as well, just doing some like good diaphragm breathing work, and so then I found that was very useful in combination with what I did with you. And I kind of put the two things together.
Mhm. I'm curious to know, I want to talk a little bit about the things you did to prepare, but I'm curious, Vanessa, like I know every single midwife is different and every practice is different, but I'm curious to know in your practice, is pelvic health physio or different ways to prepare, are they part of what you recommend to your clients, or do you wait for something they say to come up in conversation? Or I'm just curious to know what your practice looks like.
Mhm. Most of the midwives at our practice have it as, something that we cover, typically kind of in late second trimester, early third trimester, mostly because of what the evidence shows, but also because of feedback from clients, from personal experiences, just feeling like, I think if people have a general awareness of their anatomy, their physiology, and what to expect through childbirth and postpartum, if they prepare for that ahead of time, that level of education really does help them, not just through the birth, but helping them postpartum understand what's normal and how to get back to normal functioning. So we do try to talk about it with everyone, and then definitely maybe spend a little bit more time when somebody has previous issues or fears around tearing or what to expect when they push out a baby.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask you a little bit about some of the barriers that you see to referring people. But I want to ask you first, Elaine, just so that people have a visual of what this looks like first. Can you walk us through what things you did to prepare for your birth?
So, yeah, I definitely did, like I said, a lot of that sort of diaphragm breathing. And then when I went in and spoke with you, we went through a few different positions and we looked at how my breath helped me to either contract more efficiently or relax more efficiently my pelvic floor. And that feedback was really good because it kind of helped demonstrate what was working and what wasn't working for me. And then I could take that and go and practice it at home and still practice some of the positions that weren't as easy for me. And I would just kind of incorporate that into like my everyday. I did quite a bit of yoga. And so I always did some of my pelvic floor stuff, before, after I did a yoga class. But I'd also just kind of started doing it through like in little moments throughout the day as well. I would just be like, okay, take a few deep breaths. What am I doing when I breathe in? What am I doing with my pelvic floor when I breathe out? And so that just translated into doing it in different positions. And I found that for me, it was most effective when I was either on all fours or like in a cat cow kind of yoga position. I did that one a lot. And I was always going into that like deep yoga kind of squat a lot throughout. And I would practice during that as well. And so it was kind of interesting later during my birth when I was pushing, those were the two positions that I did end up pushing in. So it really did translate well to that. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if I could just quickly explain, like if someone was listening, I might just kind of explain like what that would look like, or what my goals are when someone comes in is that I always explain first that the hole that the baby comes out of is controlled by pelvic floor muscles, and that pelvic floor muscles are very automatic. So we're not used to thinking about them, but that you have control of the hole is always what I say. And that the more you can learn how to kind of be part of that or be present with that, the more you can be present with allowing the hole to open. And I explained that it's not, a lot of people envision that they need to have a strong pelvic floor to push a baby out. But then when you show them the anatomy, I always explain like it'll be your uterus that contracts to push a baby out of a hole in your muscles. So you want to actually learn how to relax those muscles or to allow that hole to open. But most people will look at you initially with a very blank stare, which is normal because we're not used to thinking about those muscles. So I always start first with just giving them an awareness. Usually they go home and they practice just close the hole, open the hole, close the hole, open the hole. And then, as you mentioned, I always tie the diaphragm or the breathing muscle in because they work so closely together. You'll get an exaggerated response. You'll get more tightening and more relaxation when you use your breath. And so I'll send them home. and they'll keep progressing. They'll start using different positions, like you said, because that hole will feel different in different positions. And I'll eventually work them up to inhale, open, exhale, open, so that they kind of get to the point where they can keep it feeling open and soft. And again, tying it into different positions and noticing what positions they feel drawn to, because a lot of women will say, what position's the best? And I always say, don't know. You're going to have some that you feel really good in. And maybe those are the ones, like you just said, I practiced them a lot and I felt really open. I always say the heavens will feel like they open for you in that position. And maybe you're drawn there first. But if for some reason your midwife or your doc says, I need you to move for this reason, it's kind of like, that's okay. I know how to do it in that position too. So I think that's the benefit of practicing in different positions. But often I'll start progressing, and I'm not sure, you didn't touch on perineal massage, but I'm thinking this is something that you worked on too. But for me, I describe perineal massage as a way to create a bit of stretch to the hole. So you're going to come onto the hole, create a bit of stretch. And then instead of, it's kind of like a yoga pose, getting into a yoga pose, we're like, oh gosh, that's tight. Like, I just want to get out of that pose. But being able to sit there with that and use your breathing strategies and use your visual strategies or your cues to be able to let go into the hole or relax into the hole. And so,
Yeah,
you practice
I
that
did
too.
do the perineal massage, and I found that sometimes I felt like it was having the opposite effect, actually. Like, I felt like when I was doing it, maybe because it was kind of painful, or there was that little bit of like burning kind of sensation, that I had to do it in the bath, because otherwise I think it was doing the opposite of what I actually was intending it to do. Yeah.
And I think that's important to say, because just because you do perineal massage doesn't mean that you're having the effect that you want. And I think, again, that comes down to you understanding what's going on in your body and understanding, no, the warm water or the relaxing bath is what helps me relax. I think that's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do, like, depending on what the person's wishes are, I'll often do a vaginal exam. Well, I always say, I'm going to go into the hole that your baby's going to come out of, and I'm going to show you the things that you're practicing, like the certain visuals that you're practicing or the certain breath you're practicing. I'm going to tell you, and do you feel how that makes it become more open? And everybody's cue or visual is different. Some people might say, oh, I really practiced breathing into my back, or I really practiced breathing into my anus. Like, everybody has a different visual. And I always say, don't really care what it is, but that will be your thing that you kind of think about. So those are just some of the things that, when people are wondering, like, what exactly is the pelvic floor physio even going to do? We all, just like you, Vanessa, and every midwife is different. Every single pelvic floor physio is different. And this is just what I do. My goal just being that you feel like you have control. And sometimes I will too say that, when they're working on that inhale, open, exhale, open. And then I'll often say, let's say after 5 breaths of that or something, I want you to try a couple different gentle pushes. I want you to first kind of hold your breath and bear down and notice kind of what that feels like, and try to do it with an open hole, like a soft open hole. And then I want you to try to breathe out with a gentle push, like using almost like your breath to push down. Do you feel that? So that they kind of start to, like, they're not pushing hard, but they're just getting an idea of how to direct pressure with a soft opening. And generally that's what I teach women to do. And they all implement it in the way they can at home, like you said, with like little spurts throughout the day, or they take out specific time in the day. And I'm curious to know then, how did that play out for you? Like, how did you find that helped you when you actually went into your labor, your birth experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I did use as well was, visualizing my sit bones kind of spreading as a way of helping my pelvic floor to relax. And I found that I did that a lot during labor too. So I think that I had a lot of sort of visualizations and kind of like things that I was saying to myself, like repeating, and so when I was having a contraction, I could apply that that breathing. So when I was breathing in, I was imagining my pelvic floor relaxing and opening, softening. And then when I would breathe out, I would do the same. And I would kind of visualize, you know, that my cervix was trying to be open, that it was trying to be softer, because that was sort of, you know, the goal of what we were during that active labor part. My active labor was quite long. And so I was getting, I think, quite tired. I'd been laboring all night and then all throughout the day. And so I think kind of going into those almost like meditative type of thought patterns was really helpful. And then when I was pushing, I did apply that kind of breathing that you were talking about, and I could, you know, bear down as I was pushing, and then when I didn't have a contraction, I would come back to just that regular general breathing in and breathing out, and having my pelvic floor still relaxing. But on actual contraction, I was using that like downward pushing more.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important. I like that you bring up that you were kind of cycling through different types of pushing too, because I think that there's a lot of messaging around you shouldn't push like this and you should push like this. And I think that makes people, they always feel like they fail, right? They come out thinking like, oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. But I think I definitely felt this in my birth, is that I couldn't get my baby out if I didn't hold my breath. Do you know what I mean? I found that if I just kept trying to breathe, I couldn't get my baby out. However, I also see some of the effects of kind of that directed hold your breath pushing for several hours, you know, manifest as potentially more prolapse, hemorrhoids. And so I think it's important to understand that there's more than one way, and having both of them in your back pocket, I think, is helpful. I'm curious to know, Vanessa, your experience in that birth situation. Like, what did you find her preparation or her ability to have some control over the situation benefit her?
I think the number one thing I would say is that, you know, she had a long labor. So she was someone who, you know, it was within normal, but it was borderline prolonged for her active labor phase. And so it was someone I would expect to have be experiencing some level of exhaustion in that second stage of pushing. And oftentimes when people are already exhausted by the point of second stage, they don't always have the energy or even the mental ability to just kind of like connect with their pelvic floor and find that position that's working for them to push. So we often need to do a lot of guided pushing. Sometimes we need the help of medications and other things, interventions to help get that baby out in that last time, that last part of labor. And in actual, like in Elaine's case, she actually pushed her baby out in less time than the average first time client. So that to me was a reflection of someone who was very in tune with her body and was very quickly, despite being exhausted, able to connect with her pelvic floor and really figure out what positions were working for her and how to make that progress very quickly. We did do some directed pushing, but mostly to capitalize on what energy levels she still had so that she didn't get to that point of, you know, 2 hours of pushing and really feeling like she couldn't go on. But really, it was pretty minimal. We didn't have to do it a lot. And I think it was really like a combined effort of working together, position changes, and telling her when we were noticing progress so that she, you know, keeping people motivated too. Because I think sometimes you're listening to your body, but you don't know if it's working. So it usually is very much a back and forth. And it was really amazing.
Awesome.
That was really, really helpful, actually, that feedback from you, because it was like, okay, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I am doing something that's effective. And so having that kind of reinforcement was like, okay, I can keep doing that if that's what's working right now. And so that was super helpful. And I think that, like Vanessa said, that combined effort, I could combine what she was telling me with what I kind of felt like I needed to do with my body. And I did really visualize what was happening. And so I really tried to visualize as I pushed, having baby like coming down the birth canal at that time. And like I actually like had that sort of in my head of what I was trying to achieve. And I think that really helped as well.
Awesome. I love it. And that's good. And I think that at the end of the day, I think having that ability to feel like, before we recorded, Vanessa said like our ultimate goal is that people feel like they're part of the experience, and that it's birth isn't something that's happening to you, but that you're part of that. So I like that. I like that. And I wonder, on a closing note, ladies, I wonder if, because obviously there's barriers to coming to see a physio. A lot of it's cost. A lot of it is where you live right now. You know, the services we provide are not covered by our medical system. And so I wonder if moving forward, if you have any suggestions. I think just us sitting down and talking about it for the benefit of others is helpful. But I wonder if you have any other suggestions of, I don't know, like how we can kind of break down some of those barriers, because that's kind of what my podcast goal is all about. Like, how do we move forward with this? So, any suggestions at all?
It's a hard one. I am like a staunch advocate for women's health, and I really truly believe that the medical system to some extent is failing women in terms of, you know, just accessing certain levels of care. I know in some countries, pelvic floor physio is like a basic part of their healthcare system that everyone can access. And I think that lots of women are walking around, you know, from experiences from childbirth with basic function issues, with, you know, small to major things that are affecting their quality of life that they don't need to be dealing with if they had access to the right kind of care and the right level of knowledge and information about what's happening, or how they can work past these issues. I think I've heard that for sure from obstetrician gynecologists as well. And it's really too bad. I think hopefully we will get there one day, and I think it's going to require lots of education and advocacy work. But I do believe that some level of basic physio should be accessible to every woman, like in pregnancy, ideally, and postpartum for sure, just to assess, okay, where are you at? What work do you need to do? Because like I say, I think women are really strong and will put up with a lot. We tend to care deeply for those around us, and so we often put their health and well-being first, and will tolerate a lot of, you know, minor chronic issues because we can still, you know, function. We can still meet the needs of those around us. Where we could actually achieve maybe even a better quality of life if we could access certain care and education on how our bodies work and how to prevent these issues.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you make, because you hear a lot of, and I'm sure you get it too, is that a lot of women say like, I never got this information from my midwife or my doctor. But I always say like, they're not rehab professionals. That's not their training, is to help you through the rehab. And that's the benefit of, I think you touched on it too, Elaine, is like seeing a therapist before. Like, that is our expertise, is to help you recover from injury. And the benefit of coming before is that you have a plan for postpartum, that not only are you preparing for the birth, and I never like to call birth an injury, but it kind of is an injury. And so understanding that you're going to have parts of your body that don't feel like they work very well after, but that you can recover. And I think that's maybe another benefit to coming in before, is that instead of afterwards be like, oh my, what just happened? And thinking that your care provider is going to provide you with a rehab plan, which is not their expertise, but that knowing like, okay, this is normal, that I'm feeling this, this, and this, and this. I'm feeling leaking. I'm feeling pressure. It's difficult to have sex. I feel my whole body is weak, but it's okay. I have a plan. And so on that note, I wonder if, you know, if you have any more insight, Elaine.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, you know, knowing that it's available and that it's out there. I for myself as a practitioner too, I have seen a lot of women that talk, and I talk about pelvic floor, and they're like you said, I didn't get that information, or I didn't know about that when, when I was pregnant, or, and, I kind of said, well, it's not too late to still go and to still work on some of these things. It doesn't matter if you had your baby 5 years ago, 10 years, 20 years ago, if you're still, having some of these issues that you feel like goes back to that it's still available to you to work on at any time. And yeah, so I think just that education of knowing that something like that is out there, that you, and then hopefully being able to access it, like you said. But I think, doing this type of thing and having information that people can access online, or that, like with your program, that you can sign up for online and work through some videos. It's not the same as having someone have their hands on you and giving that direct feedback, but there is still a lot of value and benefit from going through it, having those models, having the discussion, and being able to do some different exercises and breathing, and try to still kind of, you can still work through some things on your own, even if you don't have the ability to go in to see somebody.
And that's one of the reasons, trying to break down some of the barriers. I get that it's very expensive for one-on-one appointments. So it's one of the reasons that I created the online program that walks you through all the things we did for birth prep and recovery postpartum, because I know that it's easier sometimes to work through things at home. Sometimes it's embarrassing to come and talk to a stranger about your most intimate issues. So I find it's a really good way to progress you. You get to see another client progressing through all of it. And I find it supplements. If you decide that you need a little bit more help and you want to go see someone individually, then it would be you coming in with a lot of knowledge. You're getting all of, you've started all the exercises, and then you can go in and see someone and say, this is where I'm at. Because I do find a lot of women are coming during pregnancy and just saying, okay, Melissa, I know nothing. I'm here to learn. But everything they want to cover can take many, many, many sessions, right? They want to learn about exercise. They want to learn about diastasis. They want to learn about birth prep. They want to learn about postpartum recovery. And it's not going to be done in one session. So I think the program's a really good way to sink your teeth into it or get your feet wet and then see someone as a supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, ladies, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and just being open to talk about this for the benefit of others.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.